hello, and welcome.
Hello.
Welcome to another edition of Thinking Like a Lawyer. I'm Joe Patrice from Above the Law. I'm joined by Kathryn Rubino, as per usual.
As per usual. Yeah, I'm here. It's officially summer. This past weekend was, I think, the first weekend of summer.
Yeah, and it's a heat advisory here. There's a major...
Not just on the East Coast. I mean,
well, yes. Actually,
is,
our poor heat wave, it's a serious heat wave, and nobody cares because of what's happening on the West Coast.
Well, it's really bad there.
Yeah, well, I'm actually originally from Oregon, as some people know, and that's a place where very mild summers. Mid-80s is
so
when it gets really hot.
Yeah.
It's apparently 118 degrees now.
That is too hot. People aren't meant to live in places that are that hot.
Yeah, I mean...
Well, I know this weekend was the Olympic trials in Eugene.
As usual, yep.
Yeah, and they said that the temperature on the track was 148.
Yeah.
That is
not good.
If you need more evidence of cataclysmic climate change...
Yeah.
I'm done. I'm over. This is it.
Yeah, it's not great. Well, so yeah.
Yeah, so that's summer. It doesn't seem like it's going to be a hot girl summer, but not in quite the way I anticipated.
Okay. Fair enough.
So, listen, I'm trying here.
Well, no, that's fair. Don't really have any good way of leading into anything. So let's hear from our friends at Lexicon.
Here's a message just for the attorneys out there. So you passed the bar, joined a firm, or even built your own. Now are you finding out that you're doing more administration than actual law practice? Lexicon can help. Lexicon is a legal services and technology provider with over a decade of experience streamlining administrative tasks like timekeeping, HR, billing, client intake, and more, so you can focus on maximizing billable hours and increasing client satisfaction. Call 855-4LEXICON or visit lexiconservices.com/go to learn more.
Okay, so we're back, and we have some
big
news.
Yeah.
We have all kinds of news. Yeah, so
it's big news for
so,
Above the Law.
Yes, for those of us, for long-time Above the Law readers, you may notice a change in the last couple of days, and that's because today, as we're recording, is the first day that we bring on Chris Williams, who's joining us to do some. To join in the ATL crew. So welcome to the show. We'll introduce you here.
Whoop, whoop.
Yeah.
How are you doing, Chris?
I'm very good, very good. In a heat wave underneath a fan with air conditioning, so I feel blessed. I cannot complain.
So Chris is coming to us for those of you who are real deep into the law school lawyer ecosphere of comedy. Chris comes to us largely from the Law School Memes for Edgy T14s meme group on Facebook, which if you haven't checked out, you should. I used to post some of them on Above the Law here and there, where he's been working as a moderator and growing that to how many people are in there now?
You have a couple thousand, I think 100,000.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
100,000. It's been cited in law review articles and stuff. Even
I think it was like a Harvard or something.
Yeah, I've heard of that school.
Yeah.
It's
Not that
interesting.
they're doing too well in the rankings.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because that's a good place for us to transition, I guess, to talk about a substantive story for a little bit. Above the Law also does its version of law school rankings. We do this slightly differently than the way U.S. News does.
Well, I mean, there's only value in doing it differently, right?
Well, right. Yes.
One already exists, and I think there are some really important differences in the way that ATL does our law school rankings.
Yeah, so if you haven't checked out the top 50 law school rankings, you should do that. You'll see that our system, which tends to rely on outputs, the ability of people to get jobs with relatively little debt, are weighed much higher than, the GPAs and LSAT scores that are the inputs to law school that U.S. News does. Bringing us all the way around to that school that Chris mentioned, Harvard, is ranked 9th and tied with your law school.
Oh, wait, is cursing a thing here? Is that okay?
Yes, we have the explicit tag.
Right, well, as the French say, oh shit.
Yeah.
We take those.
Yeah, WashU in St. Louis is tied with Harvard, which raised some eyebrows around the world.
Mostly ours.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's... Yeah. Look, it's... obviously, WashU is a it's not like it's a secret that it's a good school. Even in the U.S. News rank, in those other rankings, I guess I'll call them from now on. In those other rankings, it is still a top 20 school. It's not like it's a real shock that it does well. But in our rankings, it got a big boost because, as it turns out, its employment numbers are better than Harvard's. More folks are coming out of there with full-time, long-term jobs in the law than come out of Harvard, according to
what
the
I will
stats.
say is I will default to ATL's ranking, one for just personal bias, but also it lets me talk way more shit at a bar in Boston.
Right.
Like, oh, Harvard, sup peer. Like, what?
Well, I know Joe and I frequently bicker about the quality of our respective law schools, and both of them have been kicked out of the top 10.
In the ATL rankings.
In the ATL
that's true.
rankings, yes. Both Columbia and NYU are not in the top 10.
Yeah. I mean,
How's that feel?
I mean, it gets a little rough. We've never actually done. Neither of our schools have ever done well in our system because
they're
one
expensive.
They're living in New York is more expensive, and so they get dinged because while our employment numbers are generally pretty good, it costs more, and you could land at a big law firm in New York, going to places that are not quite as expensive as NYU and Columbia. So
wait, is WashU cheap? Because based off of my tuition.
It is not, but though it is
it's all relative,
cheaper,
right? Yeah.
Yeah, it is cheaper than NYU and Columbia by. I was looking at Law School Transparency's numbers. It's something like total cost, including your living and yada yada yada, assuming zero scholarships and everything, was like $350 for UNI schools and like $302 or something like that for
so that's not
WashU,
nothing.
which is still
that's not
hugely
nothing.
expensive. Yeah. But it's that little bit that can make a difference in a ranking system that cares about debt loads. But
I will say to anybody thinking about ranking and like cost of living based off of where you want to go, St. Louis, really bad Philly cheesesteaks and chopped cheeses.
Yeah.
Their transit system had much to ask for. So, I mean, that's also something to factor in. But that's cool to hear because this is my first time hearing it. So
yeah. No. So top 10 school. I actually had an interchange with a WashU grad over internet because I wrote a piece saying that, obviously there's some weaknesses with our rankings, and some people might point to like this particular inflation. And I explained why and like how we don't have the ability to really discern out the full-time, long-term jobs from like if you're working for Polsinelli in St. Louis, that's a big national firm and you've got a good gig, but like you can't quite.
You're probably also not making 205.
Right, it can't quite measure that versus working for Skadden in New York, and that distinction matters because WashU is very good about getting people jobs, and about a quarter of them are in Missouri, and that's something we can't really parse with our rankings.
Right, whereas like Columbia has the most folks going into big law, period, and that is not rewarded nearly as much as just getting them full-time, long-term law jobs.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so I had a back and forth. And, this is a WashU grad who has a big law job in New York and was saying, well, I mean, it's possible. And I'm like, I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying that,
There are a lot of people.
There's a lot of people
who get those jobs.
But yeah.
You can go to Toro and get a big law.
Yeah, but not.
You can.
Yes, but that's not a fair comparison.
Sure.
I'm just
saying it's possible.
This is much more likely to get it out of WashU, but.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's probably like the top grad at those kind of lower tier schools versus a whole tier of folks at WashU.
Yeah.
How's Vanderbilt?
Not as good. Actually, it's interesting that you mentioned that because we actually wanted to talk through that a little bit, which is Vanderbilt's obviously the school that in the U.S. News rankings is right next to you. They're very comparable, but in this ranking, there's much more of a gap. And that was one thing that stood out to us.
Yeah, and it's interesting, too, because the employment numbers at WashU tend to be better historically as well. And I think that for our rankings, that's definitely what the issue comes down to.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if, obviously the top several percentage, half, maybe even more of both these schools are able to kind of go to whatever market they want to go to. But I also wonder to what extent there's, for the folks that are at the bottom of those classes, like in Vanderbilt, like there's one market to kind of go to, Nashville, you go into that market. Whereas with WashU has the advantage of being able to funnel into either a St. Louis or a Kansas City market. Maybe that's a reason why the numbers are a little bit better. I don't know. But yeah, Vanderbilt was 15, and obviously WashU tied for 9th. Yeah. I guess I'll just, I'll just read them. So the top honors was Chicago this year, then UVA and Duke, Cornell, Michigan, Yale, Penn, Stanford, and a tie between WashU and Harvard for the top 10.
Where did ours?
Columbia ended up 13th, and NYU is 16th.
Well, one of you is still T14.
Yeah.
How's that feel, Joe?
The T14 is a number that only matters in the U.S. news world. Here,
sure, but it's become a colloquial way to refer to the elite of
it has,
law schools.
And we're going to ignore that.
Okay.
I don't see any reason.
I'm finally at a T14 school. You can take that how you will.
Actually, on that note, you're not finally. Last year, WashU was 14 in our rankings, so was already T14.
Well, this is top 10 now.
Yeah,
I feel like it's tier 14, or is it T14er now that there's higher up?
Yeah, like I don't know. I don't know what the proper grammatical term on that is.
One of the two.
Yeah. So, so I guess let's now that we've talked about a bit of a substantive story for a little bit, let's transition, get a little bit more of introducing you to the audience. So, like, how'd you get into the meme group situation?
Okay. So the way it worked out, I'm just very online, and it turns out that Facebook is a great way to avoid learning the rules against perpetuity.
Fair.
It was my go-to. I was like, oh, do I really care that much about standing? No. But they have haha reacts. I want those. So that's kind of how it started. Joined the group. And then there was one point where they were asking for, people that were interested in being mods, and just on a whim, I did one of those I volunteer as tribute, whistle sound from Hunger Games. And then, I posted a few memes. Some of them were good. The other ones we will not acknowledge. And they were like, okay, fuck it, you're on. And I'm like, okay, cool. So then I found a way to not get kicked off from the moderating group. And then after I guess, I don't know if it was a year in real time, a year in internet time, or a year in COVID time. But after a year, I just became an admin. So became more involved with the general politic of the group, which really just means there's a cool group chat that we all have where we get to have conversations with each other. And it became more of like a group of people I was in. I actually became closer to a lot of the fellow admins and moderators in my cohort at WashU. So that was interesting.
So one of the questions I always love to ask on podcasts when you're trying to get to know someone for a legal podcast is, why did you go to law school in the first place? You're much closer to the law school experience than myself or Joe, but I think it's always kind of an interesting question to kind of figure out, how people approach the profession.
Sure. I think the long answer to why I went to law school is because I didn't have as good of a mentor as I could have. So to keep this colloquial, what had happened was I graduated from Rutgers Newark, 2 degrees, had a degree in philosophy, and I had a degree in African and African-American studies. And I thought to myself, I really want to keep on reading the work of cool Black people and dead white men. How can I do this without becoming a career student? I figured I could either get a PhD and teach philosophy at some school and then be a adjunct professor and then get screwed over and never get tenure. Or
sounds about right, yeah.
Or I could get a law degree, teach jurisprudence, get paid 6 figures to teach legal philosophy and still have summer break. So that's what I wanted to do. That's the reason I went to law school. I had no intention of ever practicing.
I mean, you can definitely read exactly those 2 categories of authors in the law. So that's there is that.
So what it was a clever way to do that.
I mean, it was an attempt. It was an attempt. So the thought was, and I figured, and this is the thing about WashU, kind of the climate, was I was one of those people that thought myself, okay, I'll get in a little bit of a scholarship. I'll finish 1L, top 5 in my class, be phenomenal, transfer to Harvard, Yale, Stanford, NYU, because those are the teacher schools, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do all my readings. People are like, get a study group. I'm like, I'm good. I don't need one of those. Get my first grades back. I got a 3.18. And I was like, oh, this is what it sounds like when dreams die. So after that, I'm like, looks like I'm not transferring. But then I had one of those, aim for the stars, because even if you fall, you'll be on the moon. WashU's a good moon, right?
Yeah.
So decided to stick it at WashU, met some amazing people, accrued some amazing debt, and now I'm here.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you, because we really do feel Kathryn kind of made the allusion to us being old, which I did not appreciate at all a second ago, but she did it anyway.
He graduated this year.
Right.
Anything more than 2020, right, he's closer to the law school experience than we are.
I agree. Yeah, so
I'm
anyway.
not old.
Yeah, okay.
I will be very clear about that.
So, yeah, no, but yeah, no, it's great to have somebody who's actually been in law school more recently, because you're going to have a lot different. I mean, I don't even know what that situation's even like anymore, other than what people occasionally tell me, and I'm sure I don't get the best reports. So
I mean, it's probably the same as what you did. We go into contract, we put on the VR set, we listen to,
Yeah, no. So yeah, no.
I will say that I had my study guides, like the commercial outlines that I bought, on cassette tape.
What?
Ooh.
Yes, I had a cassette tape version, so I could do it while I was walking around and running errands.
Wow.
Because I had a Walkman, the original cassette tape.
Wow.
The closest relationship I have to cassette tapes is that some games have the cassette image icon as the save function. So there may be a bit of a difference.
Some anachronistic picture. Yeah. Wow. Wow, Kathryn.
Well, I also bought every study guide for every class.
Oh,
and I was like, ooh, this one's available in cassette. Let me see if I'm more of an auditory learner.
Yeah. I probably should have, because I do
You
like
are,
that,
in fact,
but
an
I
auditory
didn't.
learner.
Well, let's take a quick break here, and we'll come back and talk about another one of those stories. Since we're talking about law school,
Mm-hmm. Why'd you go to law school? Did you go to be a lawyer? You
went to law school to be a lawyer, not an accountant. Although in this case, Chris has now told us that sometimes you can go to law school to be something not a lawyer too. So maybe this ad read isn't quite entirely correct. But you went to law school to be a lawyer, not an accountant. Take advantage of Nota, a no-cost IOLTA management tool that helps solo and small law firms track client funds down to the penny. Enjoy peace of mind with one-click reconciliation, automated transaction alerts, and real-time bank data. Visit trustnota.com/legal to learn more. Terms and conditions may apply. So yeah, the other thing we often do on this show is talk through what the big stories of the week had been. Mm-hmm. And now we've got Chris here, and we can bring him into this talk too. So the biggest story of the week is people still got raises, but we've talked about that now for 2 weeks. So there's not really anything more to say. The next big one is one of my stories. In Illinois, there is a lawyer who has some trouble with the disciplinary committee right now. The disciplinary committee seems a little displeased because, according to the complaint that they released, he billed 2,200 some odd hours to a matter that was closed.
What?
That's not that's not right.
So this attorney, who was at the time an associate at Lewis Brisbois, was working on a pro bono matter for an inmate. That matter ended because they lost, and it meant that the firm was no longer pro bono counsel to them. There was a letter sent out explaining, we no longer represent you. That's that. This associate, according to the complaint, continued billing to research and drafting of the summary judgment motion. So that happened. The matter ends in January of 2020. He bills the entirety of 2020 to researching and drafting the summary judgment motion to the tune of a little over 2,000 hours, which conveniently was enough to get his bonuses, interestingly enough.
I support robust pro bono programs for big law firms as much, if not more, than the average bear. But 2,000 hours and you don't need approval?
Right.
What is going
Where were
on
these people?
here?
Yeah.
What is going on? A lot of firms, you have things like, up to 100 or 200 hours of pro bono will be counted towards your bonus numbers. And listen, it's great if it's unlimited, but usually somebody has to check a button somewhere and say, yep, this one's okay.
Somebody in our tips line actually wrote me and said, if you build 2,000 hours to a pro bono matter in my firm, they would give you some sort of an award. They for PR reasons, they would be like, press release, look at our great associate who built this much to it.
Wasn't the award sanctioned or something?
The award appears to be sanctioned. Yeah, so
it's a great way to pass COVID year, though.
So that was 2020, and then January and the first couple weeks of February of 2021, he continued billing to this matter, which...
That's a really long time for any summary judgment motion. That is too long.
Like some red flag should have come up.
Is there no mentorship at the firm? I know everything was kind of thrown into chaos because of, global pandemic. But come on, no one's paying attention to what he is doing? No one.
No one.
I blame the firm here. Listen, I mean, obviously, don't make up billables. Sure. Everyone knows that, though. But I think the real lesson here is that big law firms have to have some sense of what their associates are actually working on.
Yeah.
I mean, that means he spoke to no one about his case for over a year.
Yeah.
Right? Like from a management perspective, even if it wasn't pro bono, even if it wasn't closed, that means no one is watching what happens. That also means that, there's no partner, paying attention when there are pro bono matters to be like, oh, let me read a copy of, I would like to see it before it gets filed. Yeah. There's none of that going on.
Are you sure this wasn't just like a SNL skit or an Onion article that got leaked?
It's unbelievable.
If we made this as a joke on ATL, people are like, that's dumb. That doesn't happen. That couldn't happen. Somebody would notice.
It started making the rounds in Chicago legal circles, this complaint, and that's where it was forwarded on to us from there. Yeah. Well, I mean, this can only happen on pro bono, right? Because if it were a billable matter, somebody would have had to go try and collect the money.
Right.
And that would have been the moment someone noticed. It's a testament to how, I guess, lax their concern for their own pro bono program is that nobody bothers to keep up with what's going on there.
Now, listen, I've heard stories about young associates ghosting on their jobs and just not showing up to work for a while, and it takes weeks, maybe months, for the firm to notice.
Wow, you're not. That's not a situation where you heard. You are literally subtweeting a person that we both know in real life. But move on.
Correct. But still, the firm noticed within 6 weeks.
It was about 6 weeks.
And that is a long time to not know what your associate is doing.
Yeah.
But it is understandably long. It is not over a year.
Over a year.
But it's too much.
Yeah.
I mean, it probably would not have happened if we weren't in the middle of a pandemic, right? Don't we think?
I mean...
We think that, right?
I mean... I guess because if you're...
The physicality.
Physically in an office, people might bump into you and ask you questions.
Yeah.
I guess that's the one thing, but yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Anyway, so there's disciplinary action.
You would imagine disciplinary action.
Yeah, because he's obviously there's some deceit involved in something like this, but there's also the financial aspect of
stealing money for a year.
He kept getting exactly the numbers required to meet his bonus targets,
and to continue working at the firm.
Yeah.
Is this firm hiring? Because I got a couple hours in my back pocket.
Oh man, yeah, no, that's a deal.
That was a great story.
Yeah. Anyway, so there's that. I think that's pretty much everything we got, right?
Well, welcome to the team, Chris.
Yeah.
Are you excited? Hope, terrified? Probably terrified.
All the words. The words.
Well, for now, for readers who are looking forward stuff, for now, you're not going to be doing a full-time stretch because you're still studying for yield exam. But
that is right.
Yeah, but soon enough. So there'll be some part-time. You'll see them on our social media and stuff part-time for the short term, and then transitioning into doing more.
And I may or may not be planning on writing a love letter to the bar as I study for it.
There you go.
And I think about my friends from last year's class that just didn't have to at all and are doing the law thing. So, you know, it'll be about the major significance of this trial. It's not like it's hazing or anything. It's very important.
So bad. Yeah. And every and we've done a lot of coverage on this too. Like everything about last year was basically, it was like the pressure test that broke all of the myths we told ourselves about whether or not the bar exam was useful. And we walked away going, no, not really.
Don't worry. The industry has learned nothing from the experience.
Yes.
I mean, they're still profiting.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's
how to make money without even trying.
Yeah. All right. Well, so with that said,
let's go enjoy this summer.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody, for listening. You should be subscribed to the show. That way you get episodes when they come out. You should give them reviews, stars, write something, show some engagement that shows more people that we are a law podcast out there that folks should be listening to. You should listen to The Jabot, which is Kathryn's other podcast. You can check me out on Legal Tech Week's Journalist Roundtable, talking about legal tech stories every week. You should be reading Above the Law, obviously, for all of our content. You should connect on social media. I'm at Joseph Treese. She's Kathryn1, the numeral 1. Chris, what's your social media info?
C. Williams at abovethelaw.com.
There you go. Yeah. So if you want to get in touch with him, you can always get in touch with all of us at once by writing things to tips@abovethelaw.com. That comes to all of us. That's a very useful place to write if, I don't know, your
Raises.
law firm has a raise that we need to talk about.
If there's someone at your firm who billed 2,000 hours.
or someone next to you
matter.
billed 2,000 hours. Yeah. All of these sorts of things, you should reach out to us.
And all tipsters are always kept strictly confidential.
Obviously. Good point. Let's see what else. Is that everything? Oh, well, and thanks to our advertisers, Nota by MT Bank and Lexicon. And yes, now I think we're done.
Peace.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.